Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be back talking to you again, and I remember where we left off. But first I have a message from Mariano. First of all, I think he's a bad boy. And secondly, I'm sorry, Mariano, that Richard still doesn't live in Deerfield Beach, because he wouldn't be far away from your bakery, and then I could taste some of the delicious pies and Italian pastries that you create. Okay, now to go on. I think I left off with Mr. Milson. Mr. Milson was the crossing guard, and he crossed the boys and girls across Monmouth Road, and in the morning and in the evening. And Richard tells me he was also a playground supervisor, but I don't remember that part. In any event, when I first got to Oakhurst School, he used to come up to the office, which was then in the the original wing's entranceway. I had to move it because the wind used to come through, and I was always suffering with back pain. Well, anyhow, he used to come and stand there, and as soon as he was finished outside, and I would be in the office, and then I had my observations to do, and I had my students to see, and I had my classrooms to visit. So I used to say, "Good morning, Mr. Milson," and go on my way. Well, one day, Mrs. Orme, who was the secretary then, said to me, "Mr. Vineburg, Mr. Milson doesn't think you like him." "Oh," I said, "I like Mr. Milson. Why do you think he says that?" "Oh," she says, "I know why. You don't stay and talk with him in the morning." And I said, "What?" "Well, it seems that Mr. Rasp and Mr. Milson used to have a half-hour, 45-minute discussion every morning." I didn't know that. So I would say good morning and go. So I eventually spoke to Mr. Milson, told him I meant no harm, but that I had a schedule to follow, and I was not able to stand and talk with him. But if he ever had to talk to me about something, I was very willing to listen. Now, there's another story about Mr. Milson.
Don't hit the table because you're moving the camera.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. This is like with the frog I told you the story at Aldo Leopold when I was supervising. Well, we'll get to that another day. So Mr. Milson complained about a 5th grade student, a female. I remember who it was, but I won't say. And he said she gave him back talk, especially leaving the school. She was very rude to him. So I spoke to the student about it, and she denied it. Well, I knew Mr. Milson wouldn't tell me something that wasn't true. Mrs. Scott was then the secretary. So I said, "Louise, I used to park in that little circle in front of the school. I'm going to get into my car, pull down the windows, and lay down, so no one will know I'm there, because I want to hear this 5th grade girl if she says anything bad to Mr. Milson." She said, "I don't think you should do that." "Oh, yes," I said, "I am going to do that." So I went out to the car, and I got in the back seat, and I lay down on the seat, and all the windows are down, and the kids start to go, and I don't hear this girl. I would recognize her voice. And then I figured, oh my, if anybody walks by here and looks in, they'll think I'm dead or I'm committing suicide, whatever.
Or arrest you.
School. Right. Well, I couldn't get up because then the kids would see me, so I just stayed there. And when Mr. Milson, I thought, was finished, I got up and went inside, and I never caught this child being rude to Mr. Milson. Turns out she stayed after school one day for some reason, I don't know why. So that was a story about Mr. Milson. Now I have another story that's not on my list. It just came to me today. Remember at Oakhurst School, we had those old bathrooms. And, of course, I didn't know much about the girls' room, but the boys' room I used to have to go check because there was always a lot of noise in there. But two incidents I have to tell you about in the boys' room. This is all before we had them redecorated, redone, whatever.
Renovated.
Renovated. The first one is that early in my being principal, the boys tore the doors off the toilet cubicles. And I would go down and I would be annoyed and I'd want to find them. And finally I called all the boys from the original wing down to the bathroom. And they all came in. And the one student I know had nothing to do with it, but I can still picture he had dimples and was as cute as can be. I think it was Jeff Hipschman. We were all standing there, and I said to them, you know, it's hard for me to understand. I don't use these bathrooms. You do. I don't know why you would tear the doors off the cubicles, but I'll tell you this. The next time you tear them off, we're going to leave them off, and then all of your classmates can see the sights. Well, not many kids caught on to that, but I remember Jeff got all red in the face and started to laugh. Yes. Now, the other time, there was another youngster, I won't mention his name, although I remember who it was. There was a lot of noise and a lot of laughing. I think it was right after recess. And I went into the boys' room, and there's this fourth grader, all the way, maybe it was the new bathrooms, because the urinals were on the wall away. Right, must have been that. And this youngster was standing the opposite end of the bathroom, and he was urinating, and everybody was clapping because the stream was going all the way over. Now, I made a terrible mistake. I called his name, and he got all flustered, and several of us got a little damp. I think we sent him home to change his clothes because he got so upset. You see what I mean about Oakhurst? Now, while I'm on the story about bathrooms, towards the end of the time I was at the intermediate school, all the lights went off in the school in the afternoon. And somebody came out of the bathroom and said, you know, there's no windows in there, Mr. V. You can't see anything. Oh, I said, that's a problem. So I went in, and yeah, it was true. You know, it was pitch black. So I went out to, I think it was Mrs. Carlson in my wing, you know, the secretary. I said, do we have a flashlight or a lantern or anything? And she said, not that I know of. I called, or she called downstairs. No. I said, call the custodian. Well, they didn't have it. So the custodian comes up. He says, I have candles. So I said, okay. So I stood outside the boys and girls room, and when somebody came, of course, as soon as all the lights went off, and as soon as they knew there was no light in the bathroom, most of the kids in the school had to go to the bathroom. They wanted to see what was going on. So I would give them a candle, and they went in with the candle, or I went in with the candle with the boys and stood there with the candles, and they did what they had to do, and they left. Before the time to go home, I received a very frantic call from the chief of the fire department saying I couldn't do that. I said, well, how did you find out I was doing it? He says, well, news in Oakhurst travels fast.
Okay, Papa, that's all for now.
Okay.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye. Richard.